Along with cybersecurity, FinOps is one of the top most priority in every organization these days who are using cloud. Recently, AWS has released this free ebook which covers the AWS Cloud Financial Management and how you can trim down the cost and how you can visualize the cost and control it. Managing cloud finance requires evolving your existing finance process to be cloud ready in order to establish and operate with cost, transparency, control, planning, and optimization. And the need for it is due to the fact that organizations have more or less lifted and shifted everything from the cloud, or even if they have refactored, they have simply transitioned to cloud without really taking the cost into the consideration. Most of the people I have interacted with think that just by moving to the cloud, the cost will be less. That is not the case. And now, as the organizations are awakening to this rude reality, FinOps or Cloud Financial Management has become a topmost priority. Cloud Financial Management, whether it is AWS, Azure, GCP, or any other cloud, is about more than just controlling the costs. It's it is about how to embrace the agility, innovation, and scale of cloud to maximize the value that the cloud provides to your business. Managing cloud technology and its finances can no longer be a individual endeavor. Finance, technology, and business teams need to ensure that IT costs are fundamentally aligned with the goals of the business. They must also understand the associated risks, mitigation, implementation, and value targets. In this video, I'm going to walk you through this new ebook, which I believe it's quite good. Normally, I really don't fall for these marketing gimmicks by the cloud providers or any other providers, but after going through this book, I believe they have really summed it up nicely, and you could really glean quite a lot of value out of it. I will also be putting the link of this book in the video description. So let's go through it. First, there is some abstract and then some forward, which you can skip if you want. Now, in the first chapter, they talk about is the cloud spend and what I just mentioned, that organizations move to the cloud without really focusing on the cost or under the impression that the costing and financial side of things will be either similar or better than the on-prem, which is not the case. So you can give it a quick read through if you want. Now, in the second chapter, they are talking about some of the pitfalls which organizations really got as a shock when they moved to cloud and then they started getting their bills. And now, in this year and time when a recession is looming large, organizations are cutting costs and now it's really focusing on cloud costs. So, one of the things organizations are facing is lack of traceability. When everything was moved to the cloud and no traces were made or no standard process was devised to track the cost, then after some time it becomes really hard to pinpoint what is costing what in the cloud. So that is one challenge. Another is unexpected billing because it's very easy to spin up and use resources in the cloud. No one really knows where that spike in the bill came from. That is another challenge. Then we have inaccurate forecasting because of this unexpected elastic and ease of spinning up the resources. It's you cannot really do a meaningful and predictable forecasting. And then another challenge is about costing oversight because again this is coming back to the same old point that if you are applying the same on-prem costing practices in the cloud, that's not gonna work. So that is another challenge. And then from the third chapter, the real meat of the matter starts. Now, here, this book talks about how you can control this costing, how you can enable traceability, how you can gain more visibility insights into this billing. First and foremost thing is the tagging. You need to have a standard tagging regime enabled in your organization, in your cloud. Every resource in your cloud should be tagged. And when I say tagged, it just doesn't mean that just put a tag there. The value of that tag should be meaningful and representative. That is why I mentioned the word standard tagging regime. Sit with your stakeholders, settle on a number of standard tags. For example, if you have EC2 instances in your cloud or virtual machines, every virtual machine should have a tag like application, SME, cost center, and operating hours, and so on. So, for example, later on when you are checking the cost, you could filter down those virtual machines by their application, and then you could immediately tell which application is costing you most money, and then you could focus on that. So, again, I cannot stress it enough. Tagging is a cornerstone and foundation of your FinOps or your cloud financial management. It's as simple as that. Without a proper tagging, standard tagging, meaningful tagging, and automated tagging, you won't be able to control the costs and you won't be able to optimize the cost in the cloud. AWS provides a lot of tools around tagging now, and they are improving it. For example, you could have the AWS resource groups. You could also read through some of the blogs around tagging best practices. I also have few videos around tagging, and I'll be posting more. Once you have straightened out your tagging, then you need to look at how you are controlling and managing your AWS accounts. We have an AWS service called as AWS Organizations and AWS Control Tower. Sorry, both of these services are aimed at enabling you to manage your multi-account structure intelligently and in a standard best practice way. So if you are not using it, consider using AWS organizations. And if you are provisioning new accounts very regularly, then AWS Control Tower is a good way to go. Another tool which is quite handy and which comes free with AWS is AWS Cost Explorer. Through the Cost Explorer, you can visualize your costing, you can filter it down, you can visualize the cost account by account basis, service by service basis, and you can do a lot of other things like grouping, filtering. So have a look at it, and you'll be surprised how cool and value added that tool is. There are also a lot of third party tools, but AWS Cost Explorer is very rapidly catching up. Another place where you could focus on is utilizing the savings plans for your compute and reserved instances for your RDS. In a very simple words, if you believe that your organization will be using the AWS for the next 1 or 3 years, then after analyzing your load, you could settle on a upfront commitment with AWS that okay, for the next 1 year, we are going to use this much compute, and then you can buy the savings plans or the reserved instances for RDS because as we speak, there is no savings plan for RDS, but you can go with the reserved instances where you make a upfront commitment where you can either pay upfront or you can pay later, and then the pricing comes down very rapidly. And literally, organizations can save 40 to 50% of their costs just by using the savings plan, and that is very automated. So I would highly suggest if you intend to stay with AWS, consider both of these. And a beauty of savings plan is that you don't have to focus on instance type for EC2 or any compute. For example, if you are using EC2 and if you want to move to ECS or EKS or to Lambdas, savings plan work on compute. So it is all transferable. And then this book shows you some of the diagrams And these diagrams are from your Cost Explorer, and then you can go through it. It's very simple, very easy graphing. Okay, then another cool thing is about CUR reports or cost and usage report. And these are the reports which AWS throws into S3 buckets multiple times a day. And they give you a comprehensive set of cost and usage data. Another good thing is that you can integrate these reports with other AWS services for your analysis. For example, you could integrate them with your data warehouse in AWS Redshift, or even visualize them in QuickSight, or you could use in Athena. And there are a lot of other integrations you could do with it. Okay, and then we have something called as billing conductor, which actually simplifies your billing if you want to do the charge back to different cost centers. Quite handy if you are a big enterprise and you have different cost centers. You can use this conductor to do the charge back, but before you use it, you really need to sit back and think about it, how you are going to manage it so that it doesn't become messy. Okay, then afterwards, once you have these tools handy and you have tagging enabled, you know what tooling is there, you have also made some upfront commitments, then you need to manage these billings and cost by using different services in AWS. For example, as you can see in this chapter, you need to make sure that people are not going into your cloud and spinning up whatever they want to at their whim. So you need to put some guardrails in place. One of the coolest thing is called as service control policies. So that is why I was suggesting you should use AWS organizations. If you are using multi-cloud, multi-account. In a multi-account, you can enable service control policies at AWS organization level, and with the help of these policies, you can restrict your users in all the accounts as which services or which um, components of those services can be used. For example, you can restrict that, okay, only these sort of instances types people can spin up. So you can restrict people from spinning up expensive instances. And then this is valid for almost all the services in AWS. Service control policies are really good, and every organization should implement them in a proper hierarchy. And you can do a lot of customization and filtration around those policies. You can also use IAM policies and put in some filters and conditions to restrict a lot of things. And this is also security best practice. And one more thing you will notice when you are doing the FinOps, it is very tightly integrated with cybersecurity or cloud security. Sometimes people think that when they're implementing cybersecurity, it might be expensive. They're not mutually exclusive. So if you're doing optimization, you will realize that it goes hand in hand with your cybersecurity. So after SCPs and IAM policies, you can also look at it with service catalog. If you don't have any automated way of providing resources in AWS, you can use AWS Service Catalog, which is quite good. And you can use, for example, for virtual machines, you can integrate it with AWS Image Builder, which basically uses CloudFormation behind the scenes. After that, there are few other small tools like cost and anomaly detection that if you see a spike or unexpected bill, you can go into this and see what happened. You can narrow it down with the time and other stuffs. AWS budgets, another um, small service which enables you to put in some other enforcements around your specific SAP or IAM policies, and then you can also stop the resources from the sections. Once that's done, you need to really get into the cloud forecasting and budgeting. Again, Cost Explorer is your friend here. You should be heavily using it and then combine it with your AWS budget service where you can put in some alerting if anything goes above the budget so that you could take proactive actions and you don't get the bell shock. And once that's done, again, it is coming back to the thing which we discussed earlier about savings plans and reserved instances. And if you're still unsure, I would highly suggest reaching out to AWS. And if you have the technical account manager from AWS, the TAM, talk to that person, or even just open a support case, or even I have seen that if even if you don't have an enterprise support, if you reach out to AWS, they're more than happy to help out. Then no AWS guide is complete without mentioning spot instances. To be honest, in the production workloads, I have yet to see that any major usage of spot instances, because most of the time these spot instances are for stateless and transient workload. And if you're running production grade workload, then it becomes really difficult. So I believe that yes, savings are huge. Even 90% of the cost can be saved, as AWS says, but AWS really needs to make it more resilient, because if AWS needs it, they just give you 2 minute notice and take that instance back. I believe that instead of taking back, they should transition it to some other instance type or even some other region automatically, so that if they really want people to use it, they should make it automated instead of people doing a lot of scripting and automation around it. So, but if your workload is like that, the batch processing or stateless or transient, you can look at it and maybe combine it with your auto scaling groups. But uh, I think that that's really very cumbersome right now. Then they are talking about some of the really good tools. One of my favorite is AWS Compute Optimizer, where AWS is using some machine learning AI and historical data in real time to see how much instances are using CPU and memory, and then on the basis of it, AWS tells you whether the instance is over provisioned or under provisioned, and then you can make your instance, you can right size your instance accordingly. Really good tool, AWS Compute Optimizer. You should really uh, pay heed to it according to your workload. So, and then we have Trusted Advisor, which deals with all the best practices and covers all the AWS well-architected framework pillars. Eh, From their cost optimization is one of them, which is good. And then in this Trusted Advisor and also in the Cost Explorer, you can get a lot of recommendations from AWS, but some of them are really generic, and they might not really match to your organization or use case. So you need to be a bit careful there. And then if you're a heavy user of S3, you can use intelligent tiering, where AWS automatically moves the objects which are not being used infrequently to other tiers, saving you cost. You can use, and if you're using DynamoDB, you can use, if you are aware of your workload, you can use provisioned capacity mode. And if you don't know the workload, you can stay with on demand mode. I have another video which goes into a lot more detail around it. And if you do it rightly, then you can save a lot of money there in DynamoDB. Then we have this instance scheduler to start stop your services. I have another video around it where I go into more detail. Really handy tool, especially for your non-prod workload. Auto scaling, then it is, again, it depends on your workload, where it is elastic and goes up and down as per your use case. So, and then at the end, they just go through some of the marketing stuff and talking theory. You can read through it, where all they are saying is that cloud operations plus finance go hand in hand, and they shouldn't be at loggerheads with each other. They should really complement each other. So, and there is a bit of advice from AWS to finance that don't think that cloud is really expensive, because in cloud you get agility, and then because your application guys are shipping the products quite quickly without any upfront mega cost, they don't have to buy any servers or stuff. So if you calculate that cost, that outweighs your on-prem spend. So give it a read through, and then I'm sure that you will find it interesting and valuable. I hope this was useful. If you have any comments or feedback, please put them in the comments. Thank you very much.